Welcome back, my super soul sisters. Okay, I've just had a wonderful, actually it was quite something. I'm down by the lake, and it started to rain, so I haven't been able to go out for my walk like I had anticipated. Anyway, there's a young backpacker who decided he was going to go for a swim, and he took all his kit off, so I'm just sitting here going, okay, that was a little unexpected, so sorry for my wee distraction there. But I just thought I'd share it with you because it's not every day you get mood like that first thing in the morning. Anyway, now I am talking to you today about greener pasture shoes. Sorry, I got a little distracted there. So what I wanted to focus on today was we always think that sometimes things are better on the other side, when sometimes actually it's because we're not addressing whatever needs to be addressed here in the moment, here now. How can we actually change it, and how can we make it better? So, it's like what drives people to go greener pastures is quite often because what I call expectations not being met. So it's quite common in relationships, if I'm honest. But it's not just that. I mean, it's like it can be for work, like if you're in a work environment and you think it's going to be better at another place, and then you shift and then you actually find that it's 10 times worse because of X, Y, and Z. So, it's being clear. It's like, am I wearing my greener pastures? Is it really going to be greener pastures? So I remember years ago, there was a lady who, very attractive, lovely lady, who was married to a guy who is in hospitality. And, they lived what looked like a very charmed sort of life. And it was all very well presented, and how they came together it was the superficial, that typical, superficial material world of look good, but behind the scenes, obviously things weren't so great. Anyway, she got distracted and found another man, and landed up going over, leaving the relationship and going for this other person. And then, of course, well, not of course, but after, it actually wasn't even that long, I think it was like 6 months, she actually realized that the greener pastures actually weren't that green. And by that stage, she had munted it with her partner that she was then trying to get back together with. Now, one of the things we've got to be asking, there's a few things that might be, it's so common, like this issue that I find is like, oh, we think it's going to be better over there when we're not valuing where we are right now. So it's not saying stay stuck in something if it's not working. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like, what needs are not being met, and can they be met, and can they be addressed before you decide to jump ship? Okay, and go. And have you exhausted all those options before you actually go there? So this is one of the things. It's like quite common. It is expectations that haven't been met. That's one thing. If we're talking in relationships, or even in businesses, it doesn't really matter what the scenario is. If there is what I call a state of upset, it's because an expectation has not yet been met. And it's like, I thought that it was going to be like this. I thought that being married to this man, or partner, or whoever it is, or, not even being married or whatever, or we would be married by now, or whatever your expectation is, I thought it was going to be like this, and this is where we're at. And sometimes it's a little bit of a gap, and sometimes it's a big gap. So it's identifying just how much of an issue that actually is, and then communicating what your expectation is. So instead of going, oh, right, now I want to have my needs met because, VICKI JANE told me that's what you should do. What you do is how you got to have your what and how shoes on, which is how do I actually make requests for that to change. So you make a request. We don't make demands, because demands just gets their back up. So if you did my quiz, and if you got the e-guide on the 3 hidden shoe types that I talk about all the time, if you are a manager in that scenario, quite often they'll avoid an issue of conflict. So if you know that you have a propensity for avoiding it just to kind of keep the peace, then that might be why, okay. It might be that say for example you've joined the Facebook group, and you want the welcome gift of the attachment trauma styles. The attachment trauma styles will tell you that, you know, maybe, say, for example, you work out that you're an ambivalent style, which is the more anxious style. They can be quite needy, because in their early childhood development, in the early years, they didn't get their needs met by a primary caregiver in attachment trauma to the level that was needed at that time by the baby, perceived to be by the baby. So we're very dependent at that stage. And if you think that, you know, the mum's going to be there and not, and then, you know, she does this sort of guest appearance thing, or she comes in for brief periods, or it's not necessarily just the mother, it can be the father as well, but whoever the primary caregiver is might only come in when they get recognition for being something, or looking a certain way, or, you know, achieving something. Then it's conditional, isn't it? And so when we start getting a bit needy, you start getting, they have that tendency to worry about abandonment. It's like, oh, are they going to go? Are they going to come back? If I'm going to be extra nice, then that will be, you know, good. So is it that it's too much of something that's causing the other person to sort of back off and look for greener pastures? See? So it's like that whole thing of, the one finger out, three pointing back shoes that I'll talk about as well. It's like, you know, we do this a lot in our relationships. It's like, you know, it's you that's the problem, but there's three fingers pointing back. So it's like, what can I change within myself that's going to change that? So the greener pasture syndrome, it would be that, is there something that I'm doing that is accentuating the situation? Is there something that I could do that, or say, or be, so that I'm not feeling like I should be looking elsewhere? Because if I think I'm going to get attention elsewhere, and I'm an ambivalent, you know, or highly traumatized, whatever the case might be, you know, if my propensity is that way and I'm not getting my needs met by the partner, they may be a stable provider, they might be really good to you, they might be a steady, you know, person, they might be the father of your kids or whatever, so they fulfill a lot of good criteria. But if they're falling short on this one thing of where I need more attention, however, you're coming across as too needy, how can you bring that level down so that it doesn't repel him? That could be one thing. Another one could be where it's like, actually, you know, he's exhausted because he is working or whatever, but then you put in the request that it's like, hey honey, could we actually have a chat? I'm feeling, you know, like I just would like to have a cuddle. And you actually ask in a nice way with your softener shoes on, saying, honey, please, can I, or I wouldn't mind, is it possible? You know, it's all the soft languages, the softener languages that I talk about, those soft words, rather than I want to have lunch with you so that I get more attention. So it's a little bit different when you say, actually, do you know what, we haven't had a date night in a while, and I wouldn't, you know, I'm kind of missing you. I wouldn't mind if we could maybe just even have an early dinner if you're really tired, and just go somewhere local, something, you know, it doesn't have to cost too much. There's an example. So, and then now let's look at the business environment. If you actually look at the business environment, it's like, oh, well, they were doing X, Y, and Z. So we had one scenario where somebody left where they were at. They'd been there for years. They're quite entrenched. They got a bit bored because their position wasn't changing. Now, you know, this was before they came to me, and then they left to this other job in hospitality, which treated them terribly. There was no sense of loyalty. It had better money, but there was a reason for it, because their staff turnover was pretty high, and in fact it was really high. And now this person's absolutely miserable, regretting the decision that they've made, and of course now they've lost that position that they had at the previous place where they were getting looked after. So in hindsight, that person was regretting the move. They thought, oh, greener pastures, more money. They just stopped at more money. And it's like, it's not always about the money. It's not always about the good physical side of the relationship. But, you know, if we're talking relationships, there's more to it. So, you know, before you jump ship, step back and go, well, you know, have I exhausted every option possible here? You know, like in the case of the business environment, could it be that you go to the guy and say, look, I'm not feeling challenged anymore. You know, is there any way that I could change that? Could I take on more responsibility maybe? Or, I'd like to move into this arena. Is that possible? If they say no, then there's your answer, right? Then you know. And then you can start looking. If it's, your partner or whatever, and they're not coming to the party, and then they say, look, I'm feeling like a little bit cramped in my style, or, I'm just so exhausted, honey, it's not you. It takes that sting out, and you go, oh, you know what, and then what I'd like you to do is list all the good things that are happening, because this is what happens is the human nature focuses on the negative, and there's like one negative and 10 positives. So it's like, list those positives every single day. Go, do you know what, they do this for me, they do that for me, or my work does this for me, it pays the bills, I'm really grateful for that. Get grateful for what you do have, and it starts training your mind to be appreciative of where you actually are. Of course, if it's not the case, don't stick around, but I just want to be sure that when you're making a move, that you are doing it fully conscious and comprehensive of what the consequences are going to be if you shift over. And so you got no regrets, or minimize those regrets if you do have any, and if it's not right, then you got to move on and find something that's going to be better, whether it's business and relationships or whatever. So I hope you found that useful. Greener pasture shoes, with the bonus of being mooned by a backpacker. Not every day. Anyway, there you go. So what was I going? Your shoes, your path, your way. Namaste.